I'm Julissa, 32, a nurse who spent years trying to rebuild a relationship with my estranged mother. This Mother's Day, I drove 2 hours with an expensive bouquet of her favorite lilies, my heart full of hope. When I knocked, she peeked through the peephole, and instead of welcoming me, she yelled, "You're not welcome here!" Before slamming the door in my face. Standing there with rejected flowers, I finally understood some wounds never heal. But what I did next changed everything. Where are you watching from today? If you've ever felt rejected by someone who should love you unconditionally, hit the like button and subscribe. Your story matters here, and I promise what happened next might help you find healing too. My story begins in Carson Creek, a small Midwestern town, where everybody knew everybody's business, but somehow missed what was happening inside our yellow two-story house on Maple Street. Until I was 10, I lived with my grandmother Eleanor, a soft-spoken woman with silver hair who smelled like vanilla and always had flour on her apron. She raised me while my mother Diane focused on her new marriage to Robert and their growing family. "Your mom needs time to settle into her new life," Grandma Eleanor would explain gently when I asked why I couldn't live with my mother. "Sometimes adults need to figure things out before they can be the parent a child needs." Despite her kind explanations, I knew the truth even as a child. I was the result of a relationship my mother had in college, a relationship she described as a mistake whenever anyone asked about my father. While my mother visited occasionally, bringing stiff hugs and department store dresses that always seemed like obligations rather than gifts, Grandma Eleanor gave me stability and unconditional love. My earliest memories are of baking cookies with Grandma in her sun-drenched kitchen, learning to read curled up in her lap and falling asleep to the stories she told about our family history. She kept photos of my mother as a teenager, smiling carefree before I came along, and would tell me, "You have her smile, Julissa. Someday she'll see that too." Everything changed when I was 10. Grandma Eleanor had a stroke one crisp autumn morning while hanging laundry in the backyard. I found her when I came home from school, crumpled beside the clothesline, the white sheets she'd been hanging fluttering above her like flags of surrender. She survived, but the vibrant woman who had raised me was replaced by someone who needed care herself. "You'll be moving in with your mother now," the social worker explained to me as I sat beside Grandma's hospital bed. "She's excited to have you come live with her family." The reality was far different from this cheerful assessment. When I arrived at my mother's house with 2 suitcases and a box of books, she greeted me with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Your room is upstairs, last door on the left," she said, not bothering to help me with my bags. "We eat dinner at 6. Don't be late." That room, small, painted a bland beige with a twin bed and a desk that looked like they'd been purchased hastily from a discount store, would be my space for the next 7 years. It sat at the opposite end of the hallway from the rooms where my half-siblings lived, Kevin, who was 8, and Ashley, who was 6. Their doors were decorated with colorful name signs and artwork. Their rooms overflowed with toys and personality. Mine remained as impersonal as a hotel room no matter how I tried to make it feel like home. The differences in how we were treated became apparent immediately. When Kevin scored a goal at his soccer game, the family went out for ice cream to celebrate. When I won the spelling bee at school, my mother merely nodded and said, "That's nice," before returning to helping Ashley with her math homework. Christmas mornings revealed the disparity most painfully. Kevin and Ashley would tear through piles of presents, new bikes, video games, designer clothes, while I would receive practical items, school supplies, plain clothing, occasionally a book. One Christmas when I was 12, I received a single gift, a pack of socks, while my siblings opened present after present. When I couldn't hide my disappointment, my mother pulled me aside. "You should be grateful for what you get," she hissed. "Robert works hard to support a child that isn't even his." Robert, my stepfather, was not openly cruel. He was simply absent, physically present, but emotionally unavailable to me. He would ruffle Kevin's hair and swing Ashley onto his shoulders, but would barely make eye contact with me. At dinner, he would ask my siblings about their days, their friends, their interests, while I sat silently invisible unless I made a mistake, spilled a drink, or spoke out of turn, which would earn me a sharp look from my mother. The family photos that lined the stairwell told the story clearly. My mother, Robert, Kevin, and Ashley, smiling matching outfits, the picture of family harmony. I appeared in only one, a school portrait tucked in the corner of a collage looking like an afterthought. I tried everything to win my mother's approval. I maintained perfect grades, hoping she would be proud. I kept my room immaculate. I volunteered to wash dishes after dinner and fold laundry on weekends. I babysit my siblings without complaint, reading them stories and helping with homework. Why doesn't mom love me like she loves Kevin and Ashley? I asked Grandma Eleanor during one of my weekly visits to the nursing home where she now lived. Grandma's stroke-weakened hand patted mine. Your mother loves you in her own way, Jalissa. Some people don't know how to show love properly. It doesn't mean it's not there. But I could see in her eyes that she didn't believe her own words. The truth was that my mother saw me as a reminder of her past mistakes, an obligation rather than a daughter. And no amount of perfect grades or folded laundry was going to change that. As the years passed, I learned to navigate this emotional minefield. I became adept at predicting my mother's moods, at making myself useful, but invisible at seeking validation elsewhere. From teachers who praised my writing, from friends who invited me to their homes, where parents treated me with casual kindness that felt like a revelation. But beneath this adaptation was a well of hurt that grew deeper with each forgotten birthday, each family vacation I was left behind, from each time my mother introduced Kevin and Ashley as my children, while I stood awkwardly to the side unacknowledged. The hardest part wasn't the obvious slights, but the small daily rejections, the way she would stiffen when I tried to hug her, how she never asked about my day, the fact that she didn't know my favorite color or food or song. These small absences of mothering carved a hollow space inside me that nothing seemed to fill. By the time I turned 15, I had constructed a careful persona, the self-sufficient, academically driven girl who didn't need emotional support. But inside, I remained that 10-year-old with suitcases standing in a beige room, desperately wishing to be wanted. The breaking point came during my junior year of high school. I was 16, maintaining a perfect GPA while working part-time at the local library to save money for college. I knew by then that there would be no financial support from my mother and Robert for my education. That had been made clear when they started a college fund for Kevin and Ashley, but not for me. One Tuesday afternoon, I came home early from school because debate club had been canceled. The house was quiet. Kevin and Ashley had soccer and ballet after school, and I assumed no one was home. As I headed upstairs to start my homework, I heard my mother's voice coming from the kitchen. She was on the phone speaking to someone I later realized was her sister, my Aunt Janet. No, we can't make it that weekend. Robert has that golf tournament, and I don't want to bring all the kids by myself, my mother was saying. There was a pause then. Well, Kevin and Ashley would be fine, but Jalissa is always so difficult, such a downer. Honestly, Janet, she's like this constant reminder of my mistakes, baggage from a bad decision I made before I had my real family. The words hit me like physical blows. Baggage, mistakes, before my real family. Each phrase stripped away any remaining illusion I had that I might someday earn my mother's love. I must have made a sound, a gasp or a sob, because my mother suddenly appeared in the hallway, phone still in hand, her face shifting from surprise to annoyance when she saw me standing there, tears streaming down my face. "I'll call you back," she said into the phone before hanging up, then looking at me with more irritation than concern. "What's wrong with you? And why are you home so early? I heard what you said," I managed to say between sobs, "about me being baggage, not your real family." My mother's face hardened. "You shouldn't eavesdrop on private conversations." "That's all you have to say?" I asked incredulously. "Not that you didn't mean it or that you're sorry." "Don't be so dramatic, Jalissa," she sighed, crossing her arms. "You're old enough to understand that life is complicated. I was young when I had you barely out of high school myself. I wasn't ready. And in 16 years, you never got ready." My voice was rising now, years of suppressed hurt bubbling to the surface. "You never learned how to love me?" "I gave you a home," she snapped. "Food, clothing, a good school. Many children have far less." "A house isn't a home when you're treated like a stranger." I said, the words pouring out now, impossible to stop. "Do you know what it's like to watch you love Kevin and Ashley so easily, so completely, while you can barely stand to look at me? Do you know how many nights I've cried myself to sleep, wondering what was wrong with me? What I could do to make you love me? My mother's expression remained unmoved. Not everything is about you, Jalissa. I have 2 other children to think about, a husband, a home to run. I can't constantly manage your emotional needs. You've never managed them, I cried. Not once. You've never even tried to know me. That's enough, she said sharply. Go to your room until you can speak respectfully. I won't be talked to this way in my own home. I went to my room, but couldn't contain the storm of emotions. Hours later, when the house was quiet and everyone had gone to bed, I slipped out and walked through the dark streets to the local park. Sitting on a swing beneath a canopy of stars that seemed indifferent to my pain, I called the only person I thought might understand, my English teacher, Ms. Rivera. Ms. Rivera had taken an interest in me since freshman year, encouraging my writing, lending me books from her personal collection, staying after school, to discuss literature in a way no one at home ever would. She was young, early 30s, with dark curly hair, and a smile that made you feel like whatever you had to say mattered. In many ways, she had become more of a mother figure to me than my actual mother. Julissa, is everything okay? Her voice was alert despite the late hour, immediately concerned. Through tears, I told her everything: the overhead conversation, the confrontation, the years of feeling unwanted in my own home. Can you go to a friend's house tonight? She asked when I'd finished. I don't think you should be alone right now. I called my best friend Sarah, whose parents welcomed me without questions, setting up the couch with blankets and pillows, and making me a cup of hot chocolate that I couldn't drink through my tears. The next day, Ms. Rivera met me before school. I want you to know something, she said, her eyes intense. The way your mother treats you is about her limitations, not your worth. You are intelligent, compassionate, and deserving of love. Don't ever forget that. For the rest of that school year, Ms. Rivera became my lifeline. She connected me with the school counselor, helped me research colleges with good financial aid, and gave me a safe space in her classroom during lunch and after school. My mother, noticing the relationship, became suspicious. She's not your mother, you know, she said one evening when I mentioned something Ms. Rivera had taught us. It's inappropriate how attached you are to her. At least she sees me, I replied. At least she knows my favorite book and remembers my birthday. The tension at home escalated. My mother began criticizing everything: my clothes, my friends, the colleges I was researching. She implemented new rules that seemed designed to limit my independence: earlier curfews, more chores, restrictions on after-school activities. The final straw came on my 17th birthday. I came downstairs that morning to find the usual scene: Robert reading the newspaper, Kevin and Ashley eating cereal, my mother making lunches for the kids. No acknowledgement that it was my birthday, no card, no small gift, not even a happy birthday. I hadn't expected much, but the complete absence of recognition felt deliberate, a statement about my place in the family. That evening, when I returned from my shift at the library, Sarah was waiting outside my house with a small cake and a wrapped present. We sat on the front steps as I blew out a single candle and opened the gift, a journal with my name embossed on the cover. My mother opened the front door just as we were laughing about something, her expression souring when she saw the cake. "What's this?" she asked. "It's my birthday," I said simply. Sarah brought me a cake. Something flashed across my mother's face: embarrassment perhaps, or annoyance at being caught in her neglect. "I know it's your birthday," she said defensively. "I've been busy." Too busy to say 2 words, "happy birthday." The hurt in my voice was palpable. Sarah, sensing the tension, made a quick exit with a hug and a whispered, "Call me later." Inside the house, the confrontation continued. My mother's defensive posture, my building resentment, years of emotional neglect, crystallizing in this moment of blatant disregard. "I'm tired of pretending," I finally said. "I'm tired of trying to earn love that should be unconditional. I'm tired of being the outsider in my own family." "If you're so unhappy here," my mother replied coldly, "maybe you should leave." The words hung in the air between us, a challenge and a relief all at once. "Maybe I should," I agreed, a strange calm settling over me. That night I called Sarah, whose parents had always treated me with more warmth than my own mother. When I explained the situation, they didn't hesitate. "Our guest room is yours for as long as you need it," Sarah's mother said. "We'll help you figure this out." 2 days later, I packed my belongings, clothes, books, the few mementos I had from my time with Grandma Eleanor, and moved out of my mother's house. She watched me go with an expression that might have been relief, making no attempt to stop me. At 17, I was essentially homeless, but for the first time in years, I felt free. Starting over at 17 wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Sarah's parents welcomed me into their home with a warmth I hadn't experienced since living with Grandma Eleanor. They gave me the guest room, a sunny space with floral curtains and a desk beneath the window, and treated me like another daughter. They asked about my day over dinner, celebrated my achievements, and never made me feel like an imposition. "You're family now," Sarah's mother told me when I tried to thank her. "This is what family does for each other." The contrast between their casual kindness and my mother's years of cold indifference was startling. For the first time, I understood that the problem had never been me. It had been my mother's inability to love the child, who reminded her of a past she wanted to forget. Ms. Rivera became even more involved in my life, helping me navigate the complicated process of applying for college as an independent student. She spent hours after school reviewing my application essays, researching scholarships, and preparing me for interviews. "You have a gift for connecting with people," she told me one afternoon as we worked on applications. "The way you express empathy in your writing, the way you listen. These are rare qualities. You would make an excellent nurse." Her suggestion resonated with something inside me. I had always been drawn to helping others, to easing pain when I could. Perhaps it was because I knew what it felt like to hurt without relief. Senior year passed in a blur of schoolwork, scholarship applications, and part-time jobs. I worked weekends at the library and evenings waiting tables at a local diner, saving every dollar I could. My mother made no attempt to contact me, though I occasionally saw her around town, at the grocery store or the gas station, where she would acknowledge me with a stiff nod before hurrying away. When the acceptance letter from the nursing program at State University arrived, along with a full scholarship that covered tuition, books, and housing, I cried with relief and pride. Sarah's parents took me out to dinner to celebrate, and Ms. Rivera gave me a stethoscope engraved with my name. "I always knew you would do great things," she said, hugging me tightly. College presented its own challenges. While my peers complained about homesickness, I had no home to miss. During holidays when dorms closed, I stayed with Sarah's family, or house sat for professors. I worked multiple jobs, in the university library as a nursing assistant, on weekends tutoring fellow students, to cover expenses the scholarship didn't. There were moments of crushing loneliness nights, when I would look around my dorm room and realize I had no family photos to display, no care packages arriving with homemade cookies, no parents to call when things got hard. But there was freedom, too. Freedom from walking on eggshells, from trying to be invisible, from the constant ache of rejection. I threw myself into my nursing studies, finding purpose in learning how to ease suffering. My natural empathy, honed by years of reading emotional undercurrents at home, made me especially attuned to patients' unspoken needs. Clinical instructors noted my ability to connect with difficult patients, to calm anxious family members, to bring comfort in uncomfortable situations. "You have a gift for this work," my advisor told me during junior year. "It's like you can sense what people need before they even tell you." What I couldn't admit was that this skill had been developed in the crucible of my childhood, where reading my mother's moods and anticipating her reactions had been a survival strategy. Graduation day was bittersweet. As I crossed the stage to receive my diploma, I scanned the audience out of habit, knowing no family members would be there to cheer for me. But I was wrong. In the crowd were Sarah and her parents, Ms. Rivera, and several friends I'd made during my years of study. They stood and applauded, a chosen family supporting me on one of the most important days of my life. After graduation, I accepted a position at Memorial Hospital in a city 3 hours from my hometown. The distance felt symbolic, a fresh start away from the shadows of my past. I found a small apartment, adopted a cat named Milo, and began building a life centered around my work, my friends, and my growing confidence in who I was becoming. It was at Memorial Hospital that I met Miguel, a second-year resident in emergency medicine with kind eyes and an easy laugh. We met during a chaotic night shift in the ER. A multiple car accident had brought in several critical patients, and we worked side by side for hours, communicating in the shorthand that develops between medical professionals during crisis. You're good at this, he told me when things finally calmed down as we sat in the break room drinking terrible coffee at 3 in the morning. The way you kept that teenage girl calm while we worked on her mother. Not everyone can do that. We started dating a month later. Miguel was everything I hadn't known I needed. Patient, attentive, secure enough in himself to give me space when my past trauma surfaced in unexpected ways. He didn't push when I was reluctant to talk about my family, understanding instinctively that some wounds take time to reveal. Family is complicated, he said one night when I finally shared some of my history with him. My parents were immigrants who worked 3 jobs each. They loved me, but they weren't always present. I've learned that adult relationships are about accepting the love people can give, not demanding what they can't. His wisdom helped me begin to process my childhood in a new way. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Landry, who specialized in family trauma. In her peaceful office, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs, I began to unpack the weight I'd been carrying for years. What your mother did was emotional neglect, Dr. Landry explained during one session. It's a form of abuse that often goes unrecognized because there are no physical marks, but the psychological impact is significant and long-lasting. Why couldn't she love me? I asked the question that had haunted me since childhood. What was wrong with me? Nothing was wrong with you, Dr. Landry said firmly. Your mother's inability to bond with you was about her issues, not your worth. Some parents have emotional barriers that prevent them from connecting with their children. It doesn't mean the child is unlovable. It means the parent is incapable of providing the love the child deserves. Over months of therapy, I began to understand that my mother's coldness had shaped but did not define me. That my capacity for empathy, my drive to ease suffering, my ability to connect with patients, these were strengths I had developed despite not because of my upbringing. For 3 years, I had no contact with my mother or her family. I heard occasional updates through old friends from Carson Creek. My half-brother Kevin was playing college baseball. My half-sister Ashley was studying business. My mother and Robert had renovated the house. These snippets of information produced less pain as time passed, becoming facts about strangers rather than wounds that could still hurt me. Then, during a routine call with Sarah, she mentioned something that changed everything. I don't know if you want to know this, she said hesitantly. But my mom ran into your mom at the grocery store last week. Apparently, she's been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. She's starting treatment next month. The news hit me with unexpected force. Despite everything, despite the years of neglect and the final rejection, I felt a pull of concern. Not exactly love, that had been too damaged by years of indifference, but a human response to suffering. Are you okay? Miguel asked that night, finding me staring out our apartment window long after I should have been asleep. I don't know, I admitted. I thought I was past caring what happens to her, but hearing she's sick, it's complicated. Miguel sat beside me, his presence steady and reassuring. Whatever you're feeling is valid, and whatever you decide to do, or not do, I'm here. After days of internal debate and a long session with Dr. Landry, I made a decision that would ultimately lead to that fateful Mother's Day 3 years later. I decided to reach out to my mother, not to seek the love I'd never received, but to offer the compassion that had become central to who I was as a nurse and a person. I sent a simple card with a handwritten note. I heard about your diagnosis. If you need anything, you can call me. I included my phone number, but no expectations. 2 weeks later, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. When I answered, the voice on the other end was one I hadn't heard in 3 years. Julissa. My mother said, her voice tentative. It's your mother. The first conversation with my mother after 3 years of silence was awkward and stilted. We spoke for only 15 minutes, mostly about her diagnosis. Stage 1 breast cancer caught early, good prognosis with surgery and radiation. She thanked me for the card, her voice formal, as if speaking to a distant acquaintance rather than a daughter. The doctors say I should make a full recovery. She said, no emotion betraying whether this fact brought her relief or fear. Robert has been very supportive. I wanted to ask if she had thought of me during our years apart, if she ever regretted the words that had driven me away. Instead, I asked practical questions about her treatment plan, falling into the comfortable role of nurse rather than the complicated one of daughter. If you have questions about the treatment or side effects, you can call me, I offered at the end of the conversation. That's an area I know something about. There was a pause on the line. Thank you, she finally said. That's thoughtful of you. After we hung up, I sat on my couch, Milo purring in my lap, and tried to untangle the complex emotions the call had stirred. Relief that her prognosis was good, confusion about why I still cared, anxiety about what this reconnection might mean. I called Dr. Landry and scheduled an emergency session. Why am I doing this? I asked her as we sat in her office the next day. After everything she's put me through, why do I still want her approval? The parent-child bond is primal, Dr. Landry explained. Even when that relationship is damaged, there is often a deep-seated desire for resolution or healing. But it's important to approach this with realistic expectations. Your mother may not be capable of giving you what you needed as a child. So why bother? I asked, frustration edging my voice. Because this isn't just about her anymore, Dr. Landry said gently. It's about you finding peace, whatever form that takes. Sometimes reconnecting even in a limited way can help us process our past and move forward. But you need to set boundaries to protect yourself. Over the next few months, a cautious communication developed between my mother and me. Weekly phone calls, brief and focused mainly on her treatment progress. She didn't ask many questions about my life, showing little curiosity about the years we had been apart or my career as a nurse. But there was a civility that hadn't existed before, a space where something new might eventually grow. 6 months after that first call, with her treatment complete and her prognosis excellent, I made the decision to visit her in person. Miguel offered to come with me, but I felt this was something I needed to do alone. I'll be right here when you get back, he promised, kissing me goodbye as I got into my car for the 3-hour drive to Carson Creek. The yellow house on Maple Street looked the same from the outside, though the maple tree in the front yard had grown considerably. My mother answered the door wearing a scarf over her head, her hair just beginning to grow back after the treatments. Jalissa, she said, stepping back to let me in. You look well. The house smelled the same. The lavender cleaning products she had always used, the slight mustiness of the living room carpet. But there were changes too. New furniture, different family photos on the walls. I noticed that the one school portrait of me that had hung in the corner of the collage was gone. Robert was at work, she explained. Kevin and Ashley were both away at college now. The house felt emptier without them. She admitted, her fingers tracing the pattern on the tablecloth as we sat awkwardly in the kitchen. Would you like some tea? She offered the polite question, highlighting how little she knew about me now. I had never been a tea drinker, had always preferred coffee since my first sip at 16. Coffee would be great if you have it, I said. She nodded and busied herself with the coffee maker, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. When she finally sat down across from me, mug in hand, I noticed how the illness had aged her. At 51, her face showed new lines, a weariness that hadn't been there before. Thank you for coming, she said formally, and for checking in during my treatment. It was unexpected. I'm a nurse, I replied, the professional identity a shield against deeper vulnerability. Caring for people during illness is what I do. Yes, she nodded. Sarah's mother mentioned you'd become a nurse, that you're good at it. The conversation continued in this vein, superficial, careful, circling the deeper issues that lay between us like landmines. She asked about my job at Memorial Hospital. I asked about Robert's work and Kevin and Ashley's studies. Neither of us mentioned the years of neglect, the final argument, the complete absence of contact until her diagnosis. As I prepared to leave after a tense 2-hour visit, she surprised me by asking, "Will you come again?" The question carried no warmth, no maternal yearning, just a simple inquiry. Yet something in me responded to the small opening it represented. Yes, I said. I can visit again sometime. That first visit established a pattern. Every few months I would drive to Carson Creek for brief, awkward visits. My mother never explicitly acknowledged the past hurts or apologized for her treatment of me, but there was a subdued quality to her interactions with me now, as if the illness had softened some of her sharper edges. I maintained strict boundaries, keeping our conversations light, never staying overnight, always having Miguel waiting for me when I returned home. I shared selective details about my life, promotions at work trips Miguel and I had taken, but kept the deeper parts of myself protected. I'm not looking for the mother I never had, I explained to Dr. Landry during one of our sessions. I'm just trying to find some kind of peace with the mother I do have. That's a mature perspective, Dr. Landry nodded. But be careful not to confuse peace with acceptance of mistreatment. You deserve respect even in this new version of your relationship. As months passed, small shifts occurred. My mother began to ask more questions about my work, seeming genuinely interested in the cases I described. During one visit, she showed me a newspaper clipping about Memorial Hospital's new pediatric wing, saying she'd thought of me when she saw it. On Christmas, 2 years after reconnecting, I received a card with a gift certificate to a bookstore. The first real Christmas gift from her in over a decade. The card simply read, "Merry Christmas, Julissa," with her signature, but it felt like a tentative step forward. That same Christmas, I met Kevin and Ashley for the first time since leaving home. They were adults now. Kevin 23 and finishing his business degree, Ashley 21 and studying education. Both seemed uncomfortable but not unfriendly, treating me with the polite interest reserved for a distant relative rather than a sister. "Mom said you're a nurse now," Kevin commented as we sat in the living room, Christmas music playing softly in the background. "That's cool, must be intense work." "It can be," I agreed, "but it's rewarding too." Ashley was more direct. "Why did you come back?" she asked when Kevin and my mother were in the kitchen preparing dinner. After all this time, the question wasn't aggressive, just curious, and I appreciated her honesty. "I'm trying to make peace with the past," I said simply. "Sometimes that means building something new in the present." She nodded, thoughtful. "I didn't understand when we were kids. Why Mom treated you differently. I do now a little. It wasn't fair." This acknowledgement, small as it was, felt significant, a validation of a reality I had sometimes doubted when no one else seemed to notice or care. Robert remained a peripheral figure in these interactions, polite but distant, much as he had been throughout my childhood. But during that Christmas visit, he pulled me aside before I left. "I should have done more," he said, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "When you were younger, I knew things weren't right, but I didn't know how to fix it without making everything worse." "You could have treated me like I mattered," I replied, the hurt child in me speaking before I could filter the words. He nodded, accepting the criticism. "Yes, I could have. Should have. I'm sorry that I didn't." This halting apology from Robert was the closest anyone in the family had come to acknowledging the emotional neglect that had defined my childhood. It didn't erase the past, but it created a small fissure in the wall of denial that had surrounded my experiences in that house. As spring approached, these tentative connections continued to develop. My mother invited me to Ashley's college graduation in May, including me in the family celebration for the first time. During a phone call in April, she mentioned Mother's Day, saying casually, "We usually have brunch here at the house. Robert makes his Belgian waffles. You could come if you wanted to." The invitation offhand, as it was, stirred a cautious hope in me. After years of exclusion, was I finally being included in a family tradition? Was this the beginning of the acceptance I had longed for as a child? "I'd like that," I said, trying to keep my expectations measured. "Just let me know what time." "I will," she replied, then changed the subject to Kevin's new job. I shared the invitation with Miguel that night as we made dinner in our apartment. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his protective instincts kicking in. "Mother's Day seems loaded with potential for disappointment given your history." "I know it's risky," I admitted, chopping vegetables with more force than necessary. "But it feels like a gesture from her. Like maybe she's finally ready to acknowledge me as her daughter, not just someone she has to tolerate." Miguel put down the spoon he was using to stir pasta sauce and came to wrap his arms around me from behind. "I just don't want to see you hurt again. You've worked so hard to build a good life, to heal from those wounds." "I know," I said, leaning back against his solid warmth. "But maybe this is part of that healing. I need to at least try." As Mother's Day approached, my mother didn't mention the brunch again, and I was hesitant to bring it up, afraid of seeming too eager or being told the invitation had been withdrawn. But I made plans anyway, choosing an expensive arrangement of her favorite lilies from the best florist in town, writing a card that expressed hope for our future relationship without glossing over the complicated past. "I'm proud of you," Dr. Landry told me during our session that week. "You're approaching this with both courage and self-protection. Just remember that whatever happens, your worth isn't determined by her response." The morning of Mother's Day dawned sunny and mild. I dressed carefully in a light blue dress that Miguel had once said brought out the warmth in my eyes, applied subtle makeup, and practiced what I might say when my mother opened the door. "I brought these for you," I rehearsed in the mirror. "Thank you for including me today." The 2-hour drive to Carson Creek gave me too much time to think, to oscillate between hope and anxiety. What if this was the beginning of real healing between us? What if she had finally come to see me as worthy of her love? Or what if this was just another setup for rejection? Another reminder that I would never truly belong? I parked on the street in front of the yellow house, took a deep breath, and gathered the flower arrangement from the passenger seat. As I walked up the familiar path to the front door, I could hear voices inside. Laughter, the clinking of dishes, music playing, the sounds of a family gathering already in progress. I hesitated for just a moment before knocking my heart racing with a mixture of anticipation and dread. There was a pause in the sounds from inside footsteps approaching the door. I stood straighter, summoned a smile, and waited. I saw my mother's eye appear at the peephole. Her gaze registered recognition, but instead of opening the door, she called out through the wood, "You're not welcome here." Then came the definitive sound of the deadbolt being locked. I stood frozen on the porch, the expensive flower arrangement heavy in my arms, disbelief washing over me in cold waves. Had I imagined the invitation? Had I so desperately wanted inclusion that I'd manufactured a welcome that was never offered? Through the door, I could hear the gathering continuing. My mother's voice saying, "It was just someone selling something," followed by Robert asking, "Who was at the door?" And her casual reply, "No one important, no one important." The words echoed in my head as I stood there, the fragrant lilies suddenly sickening in their sweetness, the carefully written card burning in my pocket like a humiliating reminder of my foolishness. I don't know how long I stood there before my legs remembered how to move, carrying me back to my car on autopilot. I placed the flowers on the passenger seat and sat behind the wheel, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The tears came then, hot, and violent years of rejection crystallized in this moment of absolute clarity. This woman, the one who had given birth to me, but had never truly been a mother, would never love me the way I deserved to be loved. No amount of professional success, personal growth, or olive branches extended would change that fundamental truth. As I sat there crying, my phone rang. Miguel checking in. I answered, unable to speak through my sobs. "Julissa, what happened? Are you okay?" His voice was tight with concern. "She wouldn't let me in," I managed to say between gasps for air. "She said I wasn't welcome. They're all in there having brunch without me. She told them I was no one important." "Oh, Julissa," he breathed, the pain in his voice reflecting my own. "I'm so sorry. Where are you now? Are you able to drive?" "I'm still outside the house," I admitted, embarrassment coloring my grief. "I don't know if I can drive yet." "Take your time," he said gently. "Just breathe. When you're ready, come home. I'm here waiting for you. You are important, Julissa. So important. And I love you." His words were a lifeline pulling me back from the edge of despair. I took several deep breaths, wiped my eyes, and started the car. As I drove away from the yellow house on Maple Street, the expensive lilies wilting beside me, I felt something shift inside. Not healing exactly, but a kind of clarity. A recognition that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop trying to fix what cannot be fixed. The drive home from Carson Creek was a blur of tears and revelation. Every mile I put between myself and that yellow house felt like a step toward freedom. Not from my past, which would always be part of me, but from the futile hope that somehow I could earn my mother's love. I pulled over twice when the tears made it impossible to see the road sitting at rest stops, with my forehead pressed against the steering wheel, grief and anger washing through me in alternating waves. But beneath these familiar emotions was something new, a growing sense of resolve, a clarity about what needed to happen next. By the time I reached the city limits and saw the familiar skyline, the storm of emotions had settled into a quiet determination. I didn't drive home immediately. Instead, I found myself parking outside Dr. Landry's office building. It was Sunday, and she wouldn't be there, but sitting in the shadow of the place where I'd done so much healing felt right somehow. I called Miguel. "I'm okay," I said when he answered on the first ring. "I'll be home soon. I just need a little more time to think." "Take all the time you need," he replied, his voice warm with understanding. "I'm not going anywhere." As I sat in my car, the flower arrangement on the passenger seat caught my eye. Expensive lilies carefully selected, and arranged their beauty wasted on someone who couldn't appreciate the gesture they represented. Looking at them, I felt a wave of revulsion. I couldn't bring these into our apartment, couldn't look at them without remembering the humiliation of standing on that porch hearing my mother dismiss me as no one important. But throwing them away felt equally wrong. A waste of beauty, a capitulation to bitterness. There had been enough waste already in my relationship with my mother. Wasted years, wasted love, wasted effort. I didn't want to add to it. A memory surfaced then, something from my nursing training. During a rotation in geriatric care, I'd been struck by how many elderly patients never receive visitors, how their rooms remained bare of flowers or cards, how their faces lit up at the simplest human connection. On impulse, I started the car again and drove to Sunset Haven, a nursing home on the outskirts of the city. I'd never been there before, but I knew from colleagues that it was one of the facilities that primarily served low-income seniors, many of whom had been essentially abandoned by family. The receptionist looked surprised when I walked in with the elaborate flower arrangement. "I'm a nurse at Memorial," I explained. "I was wondering if there might be a resident here who doesn't get many visitors, someone who might appreciate these for Mother's Day." Her face softened. "That's very thoughtful. Actually, we have several residents who haven't had visitors in months." She glanced at her computer. "Martha Wilson in room 214 hasn't had a visitor since Christmas. She's 92 and quite lucid, just doesn't have any family left." "Would it be all right if I brought these to her?" I asked, suddenly shy about intruding on a stranger's space. "I think she'd be delighted." The receptionist smiled. "Down the hall, second floor, third door on the right." I found room 214 easily. The door was open, revealing a small but tidy room with simple furniture. A thin woman with silver hair sat in an armchair by the window, a book open on her lap. She looked up when I knocked gently on the doorframe, her blue eyes alert and curious. "Mrs. Wilson," I asked. "I'm Jalissa. I'm a nurse at Memorial Hospital. I was wondering if I could visit with you for a few minutes." "Well, isn't this a surprise?" she said, her voice stronger than I'd expected. "I don't get many visitors, especially not pretty young women with flowers. Come in, dear, come in." I entered the room, suddenly nervous. "These are for you," I said, holding out the flower arrangement. "Happy Mother's Day." Her eyes widened. "For me? But you don't even know me." "I know that everyone deserves to be remembered on special days." I said the words coming from somewhere deep inside me, "especially someone who's lived as long and seen as much as you have." Martha Wilson's eyes filled with tears as she gazed at the lilies. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "Lilies were my Henry's favorite. He always brought them on our anniversary." She looked up at me. "He's been gone 15 years now." "I'm sorry for your loss," I said, placing the arrangement on the small table beside her. "Sit down, dear." She patted the chair next to hers. "Tell me what brings a young woman like you to visit an old lady like me on Mother's Day. Shouldn't you be with your own mother?" The question hit a tender spot, but something about Martha's direct gaze made me answer honestly. "My mother and we don't have a good relationship. In fact, she turned me away today when I tried to visit her." Martha clicked her tongue sympathetically. "Family can be the greatest joy and the deepest hurt, can't they? I had two sons myself. One died in Vietnam, the other moved to Australia 40 years ago. We exchange Christmas cards, but that's about it. Don't you get lonely? I asked. Oh, sometimes, she admitted. But I've had a full life. 80 years with Henry, 2 sons, 5 grandchildren. I've never met a career as a librarian. I've loved and lost and survived it all. She reached out and patted my hand with her paper-thin one. And today, I got a surprise visit from a kind young woman with beautiful flowers. That's something, isn't it? Something about Martha's acceptance of life's complexities, her ability to find joy in small moments despite profound losses, resonated deeply with me. We talked for over an hour about her life as a librarian, about my work as a nurse, about books we'd both loved, about the changing seasons and the view from her window. As I prepared to leave, Martha took my hand again. Thank you for brightening an old woman's day, Jalissa. Would you consider visiting again sometime if it's not too much trouble? The request, so different from my mother's rejection earlier that day, brought fresh tears to my eyes. I'd like that very much, I said sincerely. How about next Sunday? Her face lit up with genuine pleasure. I'll look forward to it all week. As I drove home to Miguel, I felt lighter somehow, as if I'd set down a heavy burden I'd been carrying for years. The pain of my mother's rejection was still there, but it was accompanied by something new. The warm glow of having made a genuine connection with Martha, of having transformed a moment of personal pain into something positive. When I walked into our apartment, Miguel took one look at my face and opened his arms. I stepped into his embrace, feeling safe and valued in a way I never had in my mother's house. I'm so sorry about what happened, he murmured into my hair. I am too, I said, pulling back to look at him. But something good came out of it. I met someone today. Someone who showed me what grace and gratitude look like, even after profound loss. Over dinner, I told him about Martha, about our conversation, about the way her eyes had lit up at the simple gift of flowers and companionship. I want to keep visiting her, I said. There's something healing about it. Like maybe this is what I need right now, not chasing after a relationship that's never going to fulfill me. I think that sounds perfect, Miguel said, his eyes warm with understanding. And maybe next Sunday I could come too. I'd like to meet this wise woman who's made such an impression on you. True to my word, I returned to Sunset Haven the following Sunday, this time with Miguel. Martha welcomed him as warmly as she had me, her sharp blue eyes assessing him quickly and apparently approving what she saw. You've got yourself a good one here, she told me when Miguel excused himself to get coffee from the cafeteria. I can tell by the way he looks at you, like you hang the moon and stars. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me, I admitted. He loves me exactly as I am, no conditions, no expectations. That's rare, Martha nodded. Hold on to it with both hands. Over the following weeks, our Sunday visits to Martha became a tradition. Sometimes we brought board games or cards. Other times, Miguel would read aloud from classic novels, while Martha and I listened, her eyes closed in appreciation. We learned about her life, her childhood during the Great Depression, her romance with Henry that spanned 8 decades, her work as a librarian in a time when career women were rare. People think the elderly have nothing left to give, she told me one afternoon as we sat in the small garden outside the nursing home. But we have the most important thing of all, perspective. We've seen how stories end, how choices play out over decades, how seemingly catastrophic moments can lead to unexpected joy. Her words struck me deeply. I had been so focused on the story of my relationship with my mother, its painful beginning, its ongoing conflict, its apparent lack of resolution, that I hadn't considered how this chapter might be leading to something I couldn't yet see. During one of our visits, I confided in Martha about my childhood, about the years of emotional neglect, about my desperate attempts to win my mother's love, and the final rejection on Mother's Day. Some people aren't capable of the kind of love children need, Martha said after listening thoughtfully. It doesn't mean you're unlovable, dear. It means they're damaged in ways that prevent them from giving what they never receive themselves. Did you ever meet anyone like that? I asked. Someone who couldn't love properly? Oh, yes, Martha nodded. My own mother-in-law was cut from that cloth. Never thought any girl was good enough for her Henry. made my early married years miserable with her criticism and cold shoulders. How did you handle it? Martha smiled, a mischievous glint in her eye. I outlived her. But before that, I learned something important, that I didn't need her approval to be happy, that Henry's love and my own self-respect were enough, that I could create a family of choice that filled the spaces her rejection left. Family of choice. I repeated the phrase, resonating with my experience. Like what Miguel and I have been building. Like what you and I are building now. Exactly, Martha nodded. Blood makes you related. Love makes you family. And sometimes the family we create is more nurturing than the one we're born into. As spring turned to summer, my visits to Martha became the highlight of my week. I brought her small gifts, a soft throw blanket for her chair, lavender hand cream for her arthritis audiobooks. For days when her eyes were too tired to read, she gave me something far more valuable, the unconditional acceptance I had sought from my mother all my life. Other residents at Sunset Haven began to notice our regular visits. Some would wave from their doorways as Miguel and I passed. Others would join us in the garden for conversations. Seeing the difference these simple interactions made in their lives, I had an idea. What if we started a volunteer program? I suggested to Miguel one evening, to connect isolated seniors with people who could visit regularly, bring them small comforts, make them feel remembered. That sounds amazing, he encouraged. You've always been good at creating connections where they're needed most. I approached the activities director at Sunset Haven with the concept, expecting a lengthy approval process. Instead, she embraced the idea immediately. We've been trying to establish something like this for years, she explained, but we've never had someone with the personal connection and professional background to spearhead it. When can you start? Within a month, Chosen Family was born, a volunteer program matching community members with residents who rarely receive visitors. I developed training materials, recruited volunteers from the hospital where I worked, and established guidelines for meaningful interactions. Miguel designed a website where people could sign up to volunteer or donate items for care packages. Martha became our unofficial advisor, helping me understand what isolation felt like from a resident's perspective and suggesting ways to make the program more effective. Her room became our informal headquarters, her wisdom guiding our growth. You found your calling within your calling, she told me one afternoon as we sorted through donated books for distribution. Nursing heals bodies, but this heals hearts. As summer waned and fall approached, Martha's health began to decline. At 92, even her resilient spirit couldn't completely overcome the frailty of her aging body. I noticed she tired more easily during our visits, that her hands shook more when holding her teacup, that her breathing sometimes became labored during our walks in the garden. I'm not going to be around forever, you know, she said matter-of-factly one Sunday in late September. I need you to promise me something. Anything, I said, reaching for her hand. Promise me you won't waste any more of your precious life trying to win approval from someone who can't give it, she said, her blue eyes intense. Promise me you'll pour that beautiful heart of yours into people who can appreciate it. I promise, I whispered, tears threatening. And promise me one more thing, she continued. When I'm gone, don't you dare throw away everything we've built here. This program, these connections, they're your legacy now. They're our legacy. I promise that too, I said, no longer fighting the tears. Martha passed away peacefully in her sleep 2 weeks later. The nursing home called me immediately, knowing from our months of regular visits that I would want to know right away. Miguel held me as I cried, grieving the remarkable woman who had in just 6 months given me more maternal wisdom and unconditional love than my biological mother had in 32 years. To my surprise, Sunset Haven asked if I would speak at Martha's memorial service. You were the closest thing to family she had at the end, the director explained. She talked about you like a daughter. Standing at the podium in the small chapel, looking out at the gathered residents and staff, I felt a profound sense of both loss and gratitude. Martha Wilson taught me that family isn't just about blood, I said, my voice steady despite my grief. It's about who shows up, who listens, who remembers what matters to you. By that definition, we were all Martha's family, and she was ours. After the service, as we were gathering Martha's few possessions, the nurse handed me an envelope. She asked us to give you this if anything happened to her. Inside was a simple card with Martha's shaky handwriting. Dear Julissa, thank you for bringing lilies to an old woman on Mother's Day. In our short time together, you've given me the joy of feeling like a mother again. Perhaps I've given you a small taste of what a mother's love should be. Isn't it funny how the universe works two people with empty spaces that somehow fit together? Remember what I told you. You are worthy of love exactly as you are. No conditions, no hoops to jump through, no approval to earn. All my love, Martha. I read the card to Miguel that night, both of us crying at the simple perfection of her words. She gave you what your mother couldn't, he observed softly. And you gave her what her distant son couldn't. You both filled gaps in each other's lives. A week after Martha's memorial, as the Chosen Family program continued to grow, I received an unexpected call. My mother's number appeared on my phone screen, sending a jolt of anxiety through me. I hadn't spoken to her since that Mother's Day rejection 5 months earlier. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. Hello, Jalissa. My mother's voice sounded strange, almost uncertain. I saw you on the news last night. The piece about the volunteer program you started at that nursing home. The local news had indeed run a short feature about Chosen Family, interviewing me about its origins and growth. I hadn't considered that my mother might see it. Yes, I started it after Mother's Day, I said, keeping my voice neutral. There was a pause then. The reporter said you were inspired by bringing flowers to an elderly woman who had no visitors. Those weren't flowers meant for me, were they? The question surprised me. Was that a note of regret in her voice? They were, I admitted, but they found their right recipient in the end. Another pause longer this time. I shouldn't have turned you away, she finally said. It was cruel. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was the closest she had ever come to acknowledging her hurtful behavior. I didn't know how to respond, my emotions too complex to untangle in the moment. The program looks impressive, she continued when I didn't speak. You seem to be making a real difference for those people. Thank you, I said, still cautious. It's important work. You always were good at taking care of others. She observed a note of something like pride in her voice, even as a child. We talked for a few more minutes, stilted, careful conversation that skirted the deeper issues between us. Before hanging up, she said hesitantly, maybe we could talk again sometime. I thought about Martha's advice about pouring my energy into relationships that nourished rather than depleted me. I'd be open to that, I said finally. But things would need to be different. I can't keep trying to earn your love or approval. It has to be a relationship based on mutual respect. I understand, she said quietly before saying goodbye. I didn't know if anything would come of that conversation, if it represented a genuine turning point, or just a momentary softening. What I did know was that I no longer needed my mother's love to feel complete. The gaping wound of maternal rejection had begun to heal. Not because my mother had changed, but because I had found maternal love elsewhere, in unexpected places, from unexpected people. 2 weeks later, Miguel proposed during a weekend trip to the mountains. As we stood on a scenic overlook, the valley spread before us in autumn splendor. He knelt and presented a ring. Julissa, you are the strongest, most compassionate person I've ever known, he said, his eyes shining with emotion. You've shown me what resilience looks like, what it means to create beauty from pain. Will you marry me? Build a family with me? Grow old with me? Yes, I said without hesitation, joy bubbling up inside me. 1,000 times yes. As we planned our wedding, I made decisions that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. I didn't ask my mother to participate in the ceremony. I chose Sarah as my maid of honor and asked Dr. Landry to do a reading. I incorporated elements that honored Martha's memory. Lilies in my bouquet, a special candle lit in remembrance, a donation to Sunset Haven in lieu of party favors. I sent my mother an invitation with no expectations attached. She came to the ceremony with Robert, but maintained a respectful distance, seeming to understand that this was a celebration of the family I had chosen, not the one I was born into. At the reception, she approached me briefly. "You make a beautiful bride," she said, awkward but seemingly sincere. "Miguel seems like a good man." "He is," I agreed. "He loves me exactly as I am." Something flickered across her face, recognition perhaps of what she had never been able to give me. "I'm glad," she said simply, before returning to her table. It wasn't a Hollywood reconciliation, no tearful embrace or dramatic declaration of motherly love, but it was something. A small acknowledgement, a quiet respect for the boundaries I had established, an acceptance of the woman I had become without her guidance or support. As Miguel and I drove away from our reception toward our honeymoon and our future together, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, about the little girl in the beige room desperately trying to earn love, about the teenager who finally walked away, about the young nurse who kept seeking approval from someone incapable of giving it, about the woman who brought rejected flowers to a nursing home and found unexpected healing. I thought about Martha, about her wise blue eyes and paper-thin hands, about how she had shown me what maternal love should feel like. I thought about Miguel, whose steadfast support had never wavered, who had seen my worth from the beginning. I thought about the residents at Sunset Haven, whose lives were brighter because of a program born from rejection and transformed into purpose. And I realized that sometimes the greatest gift we receive is not getting what we thought we wanted, because it forces us to find what we truly need. 5 years have passed since that fateful Mother's Day when I stood on my mother's porch with rejected flowers. Looking back now at 37, I can see how that moment of absolute heartbreak became the catalyst for the most profound healing of my life. The chosen family program that began with one impulsive visit to Martha has grown beyond anything I could have imagined. What started as a small volunteer initiative at Sunset Haven now operates in 12 nursing homes across the state, connecting hundreds of isolated seniors with community volunteers who provide regular visits, small comforts, and genuine connection. Last month, we received a grant to expand nationwide, developing a model that other communities can implement. The work is challenging, but deeply fulfilling, knowing that each connection forged helps heal the loneliness that so many elderly people experience in their final years. Miguel and I welcomed our daughter, Eleanor Martha, 3 years ago, naming her after the two women who showed me what maternal love should be. Holding her for the first time, feeling her tiny hand wrap around my finger, I made a silent promise. She would never question her worthiness, never doubt her place in our family, never feel she had to earn our love. Becoming a mother myself has given me new perspective on my relationship with my own mother. I better understand now the exhaustion, the overwhelm, the constant demands of caring for a child. But this understanding, while granting some compassion, doesn't excuse the years of emotional neglect. Nothing about parenthood has made me think it's acceptable to make a child feel unwanted or unimportant. My relationship with my mother remains complicated. We speak occasionally, exchange birthday and holiday cards, and have managed a few cordial visits. She has met Eleanor twice awkward encounters, where she seemed unsure how to interact with a grandchild she barely knows. There is civility between us now sometimes, even moments of genuine warmth. But the deep maternal bond I craved as a child never developed, and likely never will. And that's okay. I've learned that some wounds don't completely heal, but they can become less painful over time. Some relationships never become what we wish they could be, but that doesn't diminish our capacity to build meaningful connections elsewhere. The greatest lesson Martha taught me was that family is created through love and choice, not just biology. My family now includes Miguel and Eleanor, of course, but also Sarah and her parents, who took me in at 17, Ms. Rivera, who believed in me when no one else did, Dr. Landry, who helped me understand my past without being defined by it, the staff and residents at Sunset Haven, who became partners in healing, and the countless volunteers who have joined our mission. On Mother's Day this year, Miguel, Eleanor, and I visited Martha's grave, bringing a bouquet of lilies and Eleanor's handmade card adorned with wobbly hearts. As Eleanor carefully placed her artwork against the headstone, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the unexpected path my life had taken. "Who was Martha Mommy?" Eleanor asked, looking up at me with curious eyes, eyes that held none of the insecurity or fear of rejection that had shadowed my own childhood. "Martha was someone very special," I explained, kneeling beside her. "She taught me that sometimes the best families are the ones we create ourselves. She showed me what a grandmother's love should feel like, just like Grandma Sarah and Grandpa Tom show you." Eleanor nodded solemnly, her 3-year-old mind processing this in her own way. "Did she give good hugs like Grandma Sarah?" "The very best." I smiled, memories of Martha's frail but heartfelt embraces warming me despite the cool spring breeze. Later that day, as we hosted a barbecue for our chosen family, friends and colleagues who had become essential parts of our lives, I watched Eleanor move confidently among the guests, secure in her place, certain of her worth, knowing without question that she was loved unconditionally. This is the gift that came from rejection, the wisdom to build something different for my own child, to break the cycle of emotional neglect, to create family bonds based on choice and commitment rather than obligation and blood. The wounds of my childhood will always be part of me, just as my biological mother will always be part of my story. But these elements no longer define me. They are chapters in a longer narrative that includes triumph over adversity, unexpected connections, and the discovery that sometimes our deepest pain can lead to our greatest purpose. If you're watching this and struggling with family rejection or difficult relationships with parents, I want you to know that your worth is not determined by those who cannot see it, that healing is possible, though it may come from unexpected sources, that the family you create through choice and love can be more nurturing than the one you were born into. Have you found healing through chosen family? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories of resilience and healing, and share with someone who might need this message. Remember, you are worthy of love exactly as you are. No conditions, no hoops to jump through, no approval to earn. Thank you for being part of my chosen family today.